they want their outlet stuff to at least resemble what they're selling in mainline stores so that they can trick you into thinking you're getting this great deal.
Yeah, well, it's working.
Yeah,
It
it's
works.
working.
It worked on me. When you head to the outlet mall, you're thinking you're scoring a deal, right? Big brands, big discounts. Maybe you're getting last season stuff on the cheap. Well, what if I told you that a lot of the stuff there was never actually in the regular store to begin with? A new investigation from Delaware Valley Consumers Checkbook found that most outlet merchandise is actually made just for those stores and often made a lot cheaper too. So how do you know if you are getting a bargain or just a lower quality version of the product? I'm your host, Josh Sidorowicz. This is the In Your Corner podcast from CBS News Philadelphia, and Consumers Checkbook executive editor Kevin Brasler is joining us on the pod as our guest. We appreciate you coming back.
Of course.
I want to talk all about this here because you guys spent months digging into what is really behind these deals, I guess. So just kind of briefly tell me what you guys set out to do, what you found, because I think it's going to surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, well, we started just by trying to find information about what's being sold in these outlet stores. And a lot of brands, they call them their factory stores. So we started simply by asking about, I think it was a dozen or so major brands. We sent them emails and said, hey, can you just tell us about what you're selling in your stores? Crickets.
Nobody responded?
Nobody replied.
That's always a good start.
Right. Only Nike replied with a very vague statement about, something like, well, we operate Nike Unite stores and Nike factory stores and mainline stores and yada, yada, yada. But it didn't really explain what it was they're selling in these places. And none of the other brands would tell us. And then I spent like 2 days digging into the websites and the terms and conditions. Sometimes you can find useful information there.
Sure.
On these
fine
websites.
print that no one wants to read. Yeah.
Nothing. Could, in a few places, I think maybe Gap on kind of a third-party site, it said, everything we sell is made for outlet, basically, right?
Okay.
But overall, we couldn't really find any information on this. There's a lot of internet chatter about this. There's a lot of Reddit threads and things like that about how to tell what's made for a factory versus what's sold in the mainline stores, right? But very little to go on. And so, our team, led by Jennifer Barger, my colleague, who did a great job putting this together, we said, we're going to look into about 40 brands, and that's what we settled on. We're going to go into these outlet stores, and we're going to ask store personnel, what's going on here? What are you selling? We're going to see if we can, figure out what it is that's in these outlet stores. Is it different from mainline stores? Is it clearance? What's all this about? And I will say the store personnel were quite helpful usually. They usually knew, and they would be honest with us when we asked these questions.
So what surprised you the most here?
Yeah, what surprised me the most is, at least for clothing, most of what you see in these outlet stores, in these factory stores, it's called made for outlet merchandise. You think, oh, it's all stuff that's on clearance, it's stuff that the main stores couldn't sell.
I thought it was last season stuff.
Yeah, hardly ever. Usually what it is
Really?
it's stuff that was specifically made for these outlet centers. And if you think about it, if you just look at the store counts, it becomes pretty clear, actually. So, for example, there are more Nordstrom Rack stores than there are Nordstrom
stores.
mall stores,
Yeah.
right? There are more now, Banana Republic Factory, Gap Factory, J. Crew Factory. There are either almost as many outlet stores as there are mainline stores, or even far more in some cases with some brands. So there's not enough clearance stuff. So what happened is these outlet centers became so popular that these big brands were like, well, we got to get in this game. There's money to be made here. There's a whole new group of people to sell to, but they don't have enough remainders to stock at these outlet stores. There's more outlet stores than regular stores. I mean, they'd have to do a horrible job of buying to have remainders. So what they're doing instead is stocking these stores with, it's not completely different merchandise. It often looks like what you'll see in the mainline stores, different, similar color patterns, similar shirts. But overall, it's cheaper stuff. It has to be cheaper because they're selling it for less.
Right. So then if I'm not getting the leftovers from last season, what am I getting?
Well, when it comes to apparel, you're getting stuff that was they spent less money to make it. So if you're buying jeans, you're going to find the denim's a little thinner. If you're buying shirts, especially suits and suit jackets, the stitching's different. You can kind of tell once you look up close. And I think most people who shop often at, say, whatever, Banana Republic or J. Crew, the mainline stores, when you go into the factory stores, you can tell.
You can see the difference.
There's a difference here, right, in terms of the quality. But most shoppers, they're not aware of this, I don't think. I think they go to the outlet stores and they think, oh, I'm getting these great deal on last year's fashions.
On these
right?
good brands, on these good brand names, right?
And because the brands don't disclose what they're selling in these outlet stores, it becomes even more confusing. I mean, it's not like there's big signs up saying, hey, everything here is made for factory, right? The label might say factory, right? But in most cases, I don't think most shoppers know. They're not getting these great deals. And a big problem is you have brands like J. Crew where the labels might say things like compare at, and then there's a higher price. Well, compare at what? You never sold this somewhere else at that price. It's always been fake marked down at your outlet stores.
This goes back into when we had you on the last time on the podcast, this whole like pricing psychology behind if we think we're getting a deal, it's better than actually the fact that we're not actually getting a deal, but we think we're getting a deal.
Right.
And we're comparing it to these arbitrary prices that don't actually exist or something.
Yeah. And we also found that like a lot of brands, they have, Clark's Boston, for example, especially shoe retailers, and DKNY and Le Creuset, things like that. These brands, they have stores and outlet centers. They don't have made for outlet merchandise. All they're selling for the most part is just stuff they already sell in their mainline stores or stuff you can find at Macy's and Nordstrom's and other places. And it's just in the outlet center. And there's, like for the shoe stores, it's kind of chaotic. Everything's organized by size instead of style or whatever. So you still think, oh, I'm getting this great deal. And then while we were in the store, we're checking prices. Well, I can buy it for less somewhere else, even though the thing says 40% off all over the store. It's 40% off, as we've discussed before, this inflated price, this list price that no one really ever charges.
So before we get more into sort of the pricing behind this, so just to kind of recap on this, when you're talking about like made for outlet clothing or products, there's usually going to be some kind of difference in like the fabric you said, maybe the difference in the construction of the item. I guess, is it necessarily worse or bad, or is it just different?
Right. And so I think in all fairness, I have to say that some people, they're okay with that, right? They don't want to spend $50 for a polo or $80 for a polo.
Sure.
They want one for $30. And they don't care so much about, lower quality stuff. I mean, look, I buy stuff at outlets often.
Same, yeah.
I don't care so much generally about the quality necessarily, although as I get older, I want fewer and fewer clothes, fewer and fewer things, and so I'm more likely to spend more to get better quality. But yeah, if what you're looking for is a $20 T-shirt or a $30 polo, okay, that's fine. You just have to know this isn't some screaming deal. You're not going in there and cleaning up, and when the sign says 40% off, the sign next week's going to say 40% off, and you really have to ignore price tags in general and this sense of I'm getting a good deal. You have to just focus on this is the price today for this thing. Does that seem like a good deal to me?
You're not necessarily like getting ripped off. You're just not getting that sort of markdown that you think you're getting.
Correct. And also I should say that some brands do have legitimate clearance centers, and we should probably talk about that.
And we'll get into that. Right. Yes. If this is the reality, why aren't stores just being more upfront that this is the case?
They have to foster, market to this mentality of, look, where I live in Northern Virginia, there's a place called Potomac Mills. It's a big outlet center, and tour buses pull up. People, come from all over the area, hours away to shop there. And at some of the stores, they do have clearance racks where the entire store might be a clearance center. But for the most part, these brands, again, they figure, well, this is a whole new group of people to sell to. We don't have enough remainder stuff. And they're expecting lower prices than usual. And the only way they can satisfy that need is to stock these stores with lower quality stuff, the stuff that's less costly for them to produce and sell and market.
You mentioned the price tags, like compare at this price. I mean, what are we comparing to? What does that actually mean? What is that price?
Yeah. And in some cases, especially like athletic apparel, some of the shoe stores, there is like a single clearance rack in the back, right? And those things were remainders from mainline stores. But you have to know the brand well enough to know, oh, okay, this is actually a good deal. So, for example, I took my daughters along for one of these trips. We were in the Adidas store. My younger daughter plays soccer. And so when we had to buy her cleats, 9 months ago, we noticed that the same pair of cleats that were like $100+ were now in the clearance rack for like 40, something like that. You have to know the brand well enough to know when you go into the Nike factory stores, yeah, there's a clearance center at the back, a clearance shelf. But it's kind of, mixed in sometimes with made for outlet stuff or just
Yeah.
less expensive, lower quality stuff. And so, the good news is we've broken this down for each of the 40 brands on our website, checkbook.org. You can actually click and see on each brand and see, okay, this is what their outlet stores sell. But what makes things even more confusing is some brands operate more than one type of store. Nike has its mainline stores, like its flagship
Sure.
stores, often downtown, big, expensive, higher end luxury malls and stuff. And a lot of what they're selling is, their higher end stuff, but also they have like these drops where, people wait in line overnight to get these special editions of sneakers and
Yeah.
stuff.
Those are the real deal stores that you think.
And then a lot of the stuff they're selling there is you can buy it online, you can buy it from other retailers. And then they have their Nike factory stores where, again, like some of their stuff, they may have one clearance rack in the back, right? But for the most part, it's, mid-tier price stuff,
Okay.
right? It's not stuff like that's on clearance or anything like that. It's not leftovers. It's stuff you might be able to buy at whatever, at Dick's Sporting Goods for less. And often we found the stuff there we could find for less elsewhere. But then Nike also operates clearance centers. And the clearance centers we found are true dumping grounds with great deals. And one way to know that they're great deals is, first of all, it only operates like 20, 25 clearance centers in the country.
As I say, I don't know that I've ever. You don't see
yeah,
those as often.
there's not many. There's only like one in each metro area.
Okay.
And you go in, and there's signs all over the place that say all sales final, no returns.
I say these are like the damaged models, the floor models, the extras.
Right.
This
Or
is,
when we went, it was just a lot of hoodies. Like it
Okay.
was the end
That
of
was
the winter was
off-season.
winding down, and they were like, the people working there, we asked, what are you selling here? And they said, it's all remainders, it's all clearance, all sales final. And there again, my kids know the brand well enough to say, oh, this Nike Tech sweatshirt's usually like $125, $150. It's here for $25. And so, there's some kind of, amount of mishmash of styles and what's available, and you kind of have to dig through the racks
yeah.
to find
you
what
gotta
you
work
want.
for it. Yeah.
But there were, legitimate savings in terms of what they originally charged.
Okay.
But that's the exception to the rule, really.
So you got the mainline stores, you've got the made for outlets, which is like the majority
Yeah.
of the stores, and then like if you're lucky, you live near one of these actual real deal clearance
Right.
centers where you might be able to actually
Right.
score a deal, a true deal.
And then to confuse it even more, yeah, you have brands like Brooks Brothers where they operate factory outlet stores. And what we found is that about 80% of the merchandise in that store was made for outlet. And about 20%, they were remainders. They were steeply marked down merchandise from its mainline stores. And with Brooks Brothers, you can tell based on the price tag we found the difference between the two. Like if there's a 26 on the price tag, it means it was a mainline brand that they're selling at clearance. And if there was a little 27 in the top left-hand corner of the price tag, it was made for outlet.
These are like if you know kind of little codes on the tags.
If you spend months going to these
Jeez.
stores like
Okay.
we did and asking questions and, looking, there's a lot of, again, internet chatter out there that
Yeah.
we were able to, sometimes we were able to verify it, sometimes we weren't.
Well, what did
right?
you guys do? You talk about like some of the label differences, like there's maybe a tiny dot or like a diamond or like there's
Right.
very subtle tweaks.
Yeah, like J. Crew, there's little dots and and it indicates for the people working in the stores more than anything else.
Yeah.
Like, because they're not going to take returns at a factory store for a mainline garment and vice versa. So it's helping their store personnel kind of decipher what's going on. Because again, sometimes it's like, well, the polo looks pretty similar between
Yeah.
these two, and that's by design, right? They want their outlet stuff to at least resemble what they're selling in mainline stores so that they can trick you into thinking you're getting this great deal.
Yeah, well, it's working.
Yeah,
it
it's
works.
working.
It's worked on me. So, okay, so knowing all that now, I guess the big question is how do we shop smarter? I mean,
Yeah.
what is one thing that you could tell people to do differently than that the next time they walk into one of these outlet stores?
I think that you have to start with really focus in on this is the selling price today, and you have to ignore all this chatter about savings, right? I think that's the most important thing. You have to ignore. We've talked before about fake sales.
Yes.
Pretty much all brands these days conduct fake sales. That list price that they're crossing out, they rarely charge it.
The
So
compare at tag, like just
yeah,
be skeptical of that right off the bat.
you're not
Yeah.
saving anything
Yeah.
if the discount they're offering you is a fake discount. If they rarely, if ever, sell for that list price. I think the other thing you have to realize is that most of the time, especially for apparel and shoes, what they're selling at these factory stores, it's just kind of a knockoff product, right? And so again, if you're okay with what you're looking for is $20 t-shirts or $100 suit jackets instead of $300 suit jackets, that's fine. Just know that you're not really getting a deal. You're just buying something that's less expensive and it costs less to produce. I think the exceptions are, we mentioned Nike clearance stores. Some brands do operate these clearance centers where, yeah, you're saving a lot off what the thing sold for originally. And it really kind of, to suss that out, the best way to find them is that it's usually chaotic, right? There's limited sizes, limited options. It's a rack at the back of the store, or the whole store is, all sales final.
So the disheveled stores where you're going to find the real deal.
Yeah. Or really the way to tell is how many of these types of stores do they operate?
Yeah,
because like at Nordstrom Rack, yeah, they have some. Yeah, there's twice as many Nordstrom Rack stores almost as mainline stores.
So
it can't be remainders.
Now. Yeah, and you really, it's until you actually stop and think about it, you're like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. They couldn't possibly fill all of these.
Right. I mean, I think another good example are these furniture stores. We found a lot of furniture stores have clearance centers. We looked into them too. And found that, usually what they're doing is they're trying to sell, floor models, stuff that was returned that they couldn't sell to someone else.
Is that legit then?
Usually, yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes it's slightly damaged furniture. And again, I think with these things, be really careful about, looking at the return policy. If you get the sofa back to your place and it doesn't fit up the stairs, what do you do, right? Can you return it back to the thing?
At that point,
Yeah, maybe. Some of these places do have return policies, but they're not very liberal. They have 7 days or something to get it back.
Sure. Is there anything else that consumers can be doing actually to make sure that they're getting good value, or other ways to find good value?
If you really want to make sure, look, I'm saving money based on what this thing originally sold for, you kind of have to know the brand, or you at least have to check our research on this, right, before you go. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, these days, I find myself avoiding this fast fashion because the stuff doesn't last very long, right? T-shirts get pilled after 3 washes, things like that. And I don't like that. It's wasteful. You can't really recycle clothing usually. It just ends up in landfills or, overseas or something. And to me, it's just better to buy something that's a little more expensive that will hold up over time. But the problem is most brands aren't making stuff that holds up over time.
No.
Like Brooks Brothers used to be this kind of niche company that built high quality stuff, and tailors. I had something tailored once to fit me that I bought off the rack at Brooks Brothers, and he was like, "This is it's not as high quality as it used to be." The tailor explained to me.
Yeah.
And so I think it's harder.
That's the case for a lot of brands. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of brands have really lessened their quality to keep costs down. Because Americans especially are very cost conscious these days, and we're not willing to spend $800 just for a jacket. I agree. I wouldn't spend that either. But it's harder and harder to find, high quality, low price stuff. Weirdly, given that it costs hardly anything to manufacture these things. A really good friend of mine, he used to run a Kohl's. He was the general manager at Kohl's, and he was telling me, like, look, we can fake mark down stuff all day long. That shirt you bought only cost us 90 cents, to manufacture, right? And so we're going to make money no matter what you buy. The key is volume. That's really what these brands are focused on now, is sales volume, not necessarily profit per item.
Yeah, to our detriment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Could you? I know a lot of people too who love to shop. For talk about value, like resale. Like I hear so many people talk about Poshmark and these other sites. I mean, those are good alternatives too, right? I mean, if you really are looking for a deal on something that could be better quality too.
Well, especially high-end stuff.
Yeah.
I think consignment stores are another place to go. I mean, consignment stores, they won't take in stuff to sell unless it's just worth a lot. They can make a lot of money off of it. It's high enough quality. And I think a lot of people, they take their clothing into consignment shops. My wife's done this with our kids' stuff, and she was like disappointed
that it wasn't worth more.
They wouldn't even take half the stuff, right? We're not selling. You're not going to sell this stuff, right? But I do think resale, at least it's definitely greener, right?
Okay.
It's more sustainable, right? That a lot of the stuff we have, everyone has clothing in their closet. My wife has clothing in their closet with the tags still on them, and it's like
a disaster. Yeah, we need to go through ours too.
And I think, but overall, I would urge people just to buy less, and I think this needs to be the next movement. There is this kind of buy nothing movement where people are getting stuff for free instead of buying stuff in general, but this compulsive consumerism we have in this country, it needs to stop.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just acquiring stuff kind of by habit. And I think a lot of people, they shop because they think it makes them feel better. It's like,
Retail therapy, baby. Yeah.
It's this adrenaline rush, right? It's this you go and outlets cater to that, right? They make it easy to go from one store to another, right? There's ample parking because they're usually out of the city. And everyone there thinks, they're having such a good time because I'm saving so much money. I'm getting all this stuff.
Yeah, the
right?
psychology of it. Yep.
And it's the same with fake sales. The brands know this. And so the reason all these fake sales exist is because they want you to think, I'm getting such a good deal here. I'm saving so much money that now I can afford to buy more stuff. But you're not saving anything.
And it's this cycle then, and then
You're
it
not
continues.
saving anything. You're just spending.
When really you could have maybe spent a little bit more on something higher quality that's going to last you a few years. Get a sweater that's going to stick around for a decade or so.
Right.
You know, yeah. That's
Or-
unheard of anymore.
Or don't buy at all. I mean, I
don't
think
buy
a
at
lot
all.
of people are just like buying out of habit nowadays as opposed to buying to need. I mean, I know this is kind of preachy, but in the end, the big problem is a lot of people, again, think they're saving money.
Yeah.
They're getting something for far less cost than what it's worth. And that's just absolutely not the case.
We've got a ton of outlet centers around here. Is
Yeah.
it still worth it?
No, but
No.
I think that it does depend on the brand. So in my case, my kids were going along with me to these outlet centers, and they were able to determine. Nike was a good example. Oh, we can buy all this stuff. They bought 3 sweatshirts each, right? And it didn't cost me $150 each for these sweatshirts. It cost me $25. And they bought sweatpants. And at the Adidas store, got a new pair of soccer cleats for next season. Didn't spend $180 or whatever, spent $40. So those were legitimate deals. But the only reason we really kind of got a deal was, first of all, they knew the brand. And then secondly, and this is what I really urge, it's stuff they're actually going to wear, right? I think a lot of time, I have clothes in my closet. I'm supposed to be this consumer expert. I never wear them. Why did I end up with this stuff? I was just there, it looked good at the time, made a bad decision, didn't feel like returning it.
Yeah.
And so just know that these outlet centers are geared toward, I don't want to say a different type of customer, but they're geared toward volume sales and making you think you're getting a good deal. And we've talked about this to death, but you're not.
Know what you're getting.
Know what you're getting. And again, if you want to go in, we were surprised that Old Navy even has outlet stores. I mean, you can't have a more
prices are pretty low.
fast fashion disposable merchandise than Old Navy clothing. But yeah, even in its outlet stores, it has made for outlet stuff that's even less expensive than what you find at the mainline stores.
All right. So, next time you're tempted by that 75% off sign, just remember you might not be getting the deal.
Yeah,
I think might be getting something different.
I think these days, when somebody tells you, or you get the sense that I'm saving money, whether it's shopping on Amazon, whether it's in one of these stores, whether it's buying a roof and somebody says I can give you 20% off, it's all fake. They're just giving be very skeptical. Yeah, it's a selling tool.
Kevin Brasler, executive editor of Consumers Checkbook. We always appreciate you coming on.
Thanks,
Keeping
Josh.
it real with us always.
Just throwing cold water in people's faces.
We need it. And we will also be sure to put that link to the full investigation. We'll put it down in the bio here so you can click and check that out too. Worth the read. You guys put a ton of work into it.
There's a lot of work.
And is really useful information in there. So we'll put that down there as well.